All right, in today's video, we're going to build a vulnerability dashboard. I've already got one built here prior to shooting the video, and what we'll do is go over to my vulnerability demo build tab in Power BI, and we will build it from scratch using this table as a reference. That should enable us to quickly get through this and efficiently show how to build each one of these measures and widgets in the dashboard here. So let's start with the top three on the left: vulnerabilities, CVEs, and devices. So in order to do that, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come over to our big count, our card. We're going to drop one of those in here. Let's go ahead and resize it appropriately. And for the first one, vulnerabilities, we're just going to drop in our, let's see what we dropped in over here. We dropped in, if you hover over, good tip here, you can see what you used. So we used the count of the vulnerabilities device ID. Great. So we come back over here. We're going to do count of device ID within the vulnerability section, and we'll do count. There we go. And we renamed this by simply clicking the drop down, rename to vulnerabilities. Now, I don't like a 0.32 on such a big number. 489,000 seems totally fine. So we're going to format this visual, click the category label, and then we're going to put decimal places 0. That will bring it to 489. Perfect. So that one's done, easy peasy. Let's go ahead and we want to make our dashboard look exactly like this. So let's just pause for a second to go ahead and put our background color in here. And to do that, we're going to look at the format for the page, canvas background, color, theme colors, and transparency 0%. There we go. And now when we do that, our widget, since it's transparent, it's going to look like this, which does not look great. So on the other page, I had reformatted that by doing Effect, Background On, put the transparency down to 0 with a white background, and there we go. We don't need to do anything with title in this one necessarily, but we do want to adjust the category label to make that black so that it pops a little more. There we go. Now, the next step to simplify this process is we're going to just copy that one twice, but we'll start with the CVEs first because I like the format of it. So I'm copying it because I don't want to redo all of the formatting of the visualization. So once we have the basic format here, we can drop it over here, and then we're going to take out the vulnerabilities because that's not what we're going to be measuring on this particular one. We're looking at the count of CVEs. We're going to drop that out, and then we're going to add in here CVE ID. And let's do distinct count. There we go. So now we have 9675. Number looks good. The format's already solid, so we don't need to mess with that, but we'll rename it just CVEs. Done. Next, let's go ahead and take that one, copy and paste it again. And I'm doing that with Control-C, Control-V to make it a little faster. We're going to drop that out. And now we're going to do devices. So we're going to do count distinct devices. And rename devices. There we go. Just a couple of minutes into the video, and we already have our first three widgets from the top. Now they are a little different size than over here, but that's okay to make sure we can fit everything in without having to do a bunch of resizing later. I'm going to go ahead and delete all of these, and then I'm just going to copy them over. And I'm doing this purely for the sizing aspect of it. We've already seen how to build them, so we know that what needs to be in the values field and all of that. So now we're just doing this to get the right size. Great. So now that we have that, let's take a look at building these dashboards down here, these widgets. We have an OT devices widget. which shows the number of vulnerabilities based on the device type. And in this case, we're limiting this to OT devices. So we have RTUs, PLC, communication adapters. I think there's another one slipped in there somewhere, but too small to really notice. So we'll go ahead and go back over to our vulnerability demo build. And we're going to add that's just do we do a donut chart? Perfect. So we come over here, we select donut chart. Let's put it over here, and then we'll resize it as closely as we could to that other one. I think right about there. And let's go ahead and do another one, because we know we're going to need 2 of these. And actually, I'm going to hold off on that until we get the formatting of this one. So let's go ahead and click on this. We need data first, so let's go ahead and do type in our legend. And then type in our values. Great. Now we've got a lot going on here. We don't really need all of that. So we're going to take type, add it to a data field over here. And then we're going to limit this one to communication adapter, PLC, RTU. And obviously we could adjust this to be whatever. We could include anything we wanted in here, or everything if we wanted. We could do actuators. Let's add that in there. Great. So we've got our actuators in there now, and we could do operator panels too if we wanted. So all right, we've got the operator panel. Now that we've added some data, we can format the visual. So we're going to go back to General, Effects, Background with 0% transparency. There we go. Now for this one, we are going to want to adjust the title. And we had made this one OT devices. There we go. We're going to center that. And let's put a nice little gray background across there just for aesthetic purposes. Okay, now that looks pretty good, but we're missing one thing here. We're missing the legend. So we're going to go back. And this does look a little different than the other one, and that's okay. Because this shows you all the different things that you can do with your own dashboard, and there's no one right way to do it. I have a way I did it. You might have a way you want to do it, and every other customer might have a way they want to do it. But this will at least give you a good idea of how to achieve what you're trying to achieve. Okay, so let's add in that legend. We're going to select the widget, and then we're going to come over here and do legend on. It should automatically populate. Yeah, that's good, but I'm not happy with the positioning of that. So let's do center on the right for this one. There we go. We've got all of our options. We can select them from over here. We don't really need to call out the type from the legend over here. What we want to see there is values. So on the detail labels, instead of category, we're going to change that to % of total. There we go. Now we have percentages of PLCs and of all of these. Now, one thing I showed in previous videos that I'll show again here, you can leave these counts up here to adjust every time you click on something. For me, in the ultimate direction I'm going with this dashboard, we're going to have a lot of other fields updating when stuff is clicked on the various widgets within here. My counts, I kind of want to see static. So to do that, we're going to just drag this down a little to expose some stuff up here in a second. And we select this widget, and then we click on Format, and we click Edit Interactions. Now you'll notice these extra deals on each one here, these extra parameters or options. We're going to select none, none, none. So that means these counts have no interaction with this one widget. This is very one-to-one directional as far as how these interactions work. You select a widget, and then the selections I make here apply specifically to this one widget. If I make another widget over here and start clicking around on it, these will update again unless I do the same for that specific widget. Okay, so now we have that adjusted. We can click off of Edit Interactions, and you will see now when we click on the components of this donut chart, this does not update. Now, we may want to keep the devices updating, and I think that would be fine. That's what I did here because we want to always see a count of the specific device. So what we're going to do is we want to see a device count for whatever filter we're using. So I'm going to undo that last one a little bit. Select this, click our format, edit interactions, and let's turn this one back on. You can't see it back there, but to turn it back on, you don't unselect that, you select the filter one instead. So that's done now. Now if I click on this, great. My devices widget is now updating accordingly. All right, now let's do the CVE count by criticality. And it's important to point out that these charts are great because not only do they provide visibility and counts and all, but they also give you a way to slice your data, particularly when we get down to the tables down here. It gives you an ability to filter those tables, without necessarily doing just a straight slicer tick box, which you could do, and that would be fine. It would be totally fine, but it doesn't give you much else to look at. It doesn't give you much use just having a tick box for filters. In this way, you can filter. It acts as a filter. I can select RTU, I can select actuator, and I can filter and slice down all the rest of my tables on this page by doing so. But I also, in that filter, get a nice view of the data that I'm reporting on. So here we did devices by criticality. So we're going to take the type off of the legend. We're going to go up to the devices section and put criticality in there. Okay, we've got that. And for the purpose of this demo video, let's go ahead and take our criticality filter, and let's just get rid of the one that has none, because we want the data to look we want it to be a little more usable here, right? In another data set, you probably wouldn't have a lot that have none, or you might, but it doesn't really matter. We'll remove this filter as well. Great. We have our CVE count. We do need to add the count of CVE. So we added the criticality, which is great, but now we need to count on CVE ID. Over here, we have it counting by type, and that's not what we want to do. So we've got the criticality as the legend. Let's count the CVE IDs, and that will count those within the context of the criticality. And of course, we can change the title on this one as we see fit. In this case, we will say, I don't remember what I called it on the other one, but we'll say CVE count by criticality, by device criticality. We want to make sure to spell that out for anybody who's looking at this dashboard later. CVE count by device criticality. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. Yeah. The data looks good. The numbers are matching, so we're looking good there. And I did notice, this is just a small aesthetic pet peeve of mine, but I like to see these a little bit darker, so I like a little higher contrast. So I'm going to go over here to the detail labels, and then we'll go to the values. We're going to change that color to black. Now all of our percentages pop a little more. And by selecting the other widget, it'll remain on that same page. If the widgets are the same type, then your visualization's current area that you're working in will stay. So you can go click through a bunch of different widgets, make the same adjustment to all of them quickly. There we go. We have that one. And now we're going to add this tree map. So we did CVE count by location here. All right, pretty easy. Let's go ahead and just first go over here and grab our tree map widget. Let's put this right here. There we go. Drag it down, make it nice and big. You know, when you're dealing with tree maps on here, it can tend to get unreadable because you get a lot of very small values, and that can result in difficulty to read on some of the location with a smaller count. So I like to make this one nice and big. And again, we did on here, we did the location as the details, and then the count of CVE ID as the value. So we're going to go to location is not in the vulnerabilities payload. So we're going to use the location out of the devices table. First, we want to actually select the table we're working on. We're going to do this in the category, and then in the details. Was that how I did it? Yes. Was it? We did location details and then values. Okay. I thought so. So let's just drag location down here to details, and then we're going to count the CVE IDs in the values. Beautiful. Now that populates. Okay. So it looks like actually counting distinct is the way to go here. That aligns with our CVE count over here. If I click on USA 3602, and if I look at it 3602, so that looks good. Let's just do some reformatting on this to make it look like our other widgets. There we go. We've got our title already. So we just need to do CVE by location, CVE count by location. We'll change the text at the top to black with a gray background border. Put that in the center, make it bold. There we go. Now it's consistent with our aesthetic everywhere else. And I'll go ahead and go back to my other tree map and make the necessary adjustments, because I did notice over here we had the same issue where we want to count by distinct and we weren't. So once we do that, great. Now I did on this one do location is not blank, which is going to change the results. Well, I left blank in there, but I left the actual null. I took that out so that it's not being counted in this tree map. If I were to add that back, well, then we look exactly like what it looks like on the other screen. So it doesn't really matter. It's all about our specific data set and how familiar we are with it. I'll leave that in. So there's how our tree map looks now on the original, and that's how it looks on the new dashboard. Great. So on this next one, I'm going to go ahead, and this is actually two different widgets in one. I'm going to go ahead and show the exploitation first. Just by taking this over here and copying it and pasting it. So what we have here is a known exploitation. This is a really simple donut chart. We just pull it in, and then we add into the legend KEV, and then we're going to count the KEVs. And, you know, we can count distinct, but that doesn't give us great data, and it shouldn't. And you can tell that it doesn't, because 50-50 is obviously incorrect. So in this case, here we go. Not counting distinct gives us the right data set that we're looking for. And then what we did over here on this other one was an interesting aspect of Power BI, where you can basically build, let's go ahead and move this a little bit to expose our one underneath here. We'll take care of that in a minute. What we do here is we build a severity graph. We make we name it severity graph, but we can make it whatever. But essentially what this is just a clustered column chart. Very easy. And we're counting the severity. In this case, we only pulled in critical, high, and medium on my payload. We could pull in all the rest of them as well, low or whatever. But I only kept critical, high, and medium. And then once you have your clustered column chart, I also broke this down and filtered it by KEV is yes, because I don't want to show all of the CVEs necessarily. We only want to show those that have known exploits. So in this case, we just dragged over the KEV into the filter field here and then selected yes. I could unselect that and you'll see these numbers jump a lot higher, 463,000. That doesn't do us a lot of a good. It's not very useful data. So we're going to go back to filtering that by yes. Now we're only seeing those with known exploits. So we put our known exploitation chart here, which I'm just going to drag over the top of that. But before I do that, let's look at one more thing over here, which is when you do small multiples, that's how you get this graph to show 4 different graphs within it. If we were to get rid of that, this is what the graph looks like. This sort of ketchup and mustard, not great looking graph. We could change the scale of it or whatever, but it's not a great looking graph. You want to save space, I think, and a good way to do that is to do the small multiples. So I'm going to Control Z that and undo that action. It may not actually undo, but that's all right. We can do small. We'll just drag severity back into the small multiples. There we go. And our data is right back where it was. Okay, so now we have a nice chart taking up little space, but showing us a lot of information. And it gives us an extra little square down here to drag this little known exploitation widget down into and make use of that little extra space we had. Great. Let's even that up. There we go. And one thing to note is when you overlap widgets like this, you want to go to the Format tab, which I haven't done on this page, but I did on the other one. And you want to click Bring to Front on that particular widget. There we go. It is still going to hide for a second while I do this, but then when I click off it, there it goes. It will remain in the front as expected. Great. So now we have our little widget over here. This all looks good. I'm happy with it. So let's move on. The next thing we want to do is put in some charts down at the bottom, some reports. We want some rows of data, and those are very easy to build. In this one, we have CVE ID, description, priority, KEV, base score, and number of devices. So let's build that from scratch over here. First thing we're going to do, click on a blank area in the report, select on table. There we go. We've got our table. And let's go ahead and drag it to roughly the size that we had it on over there. I think it was about like this. And now we're going to do CVE ID. There we go. We've got one column now. And then we're going to do... see what we had over here. We had CVE description priority KEV. CVE description. There we go. Description. Let's add that. We got to click on our chart to highlight it again. Add our description in. That's a little bit of a big column for me, so we're going to truncate that just a little bit. And then we're going to do... we'll do KEV. I know it's going to be in there somewhere. And then we're going to do count of devices out here on the right. We're going to change that one to number of devices. And keep in mind, if you don't change the type, it's going to say it's just going to show us the device IDs. And that's going to duplicate a lot of rows because this one CVE might be associated with more than one device ID. So that's going to expand the total number of rows potentially significantly. We don't want to do that. We just want a quick roll up count here. So let's go count distinct. There we go. And that looks pretty good. So now we see this CVE ID is associated with or impacts potentially 3 devices, 1 device, 3, upwards of 101 down here. Great. So that looks pretty good. Just cross check it over here and see if our data looks the same. Let's see. There we go. Devices. Did I do count distinct? I did not. And I remember why I did that. Because we don't want to count distinct devices. We want to count all devices. Because one device may be associated with multiple KVEs or multiple CVE IDs. So great. We've got our count. That looks good. And what if we want to link this column to the profile? Well, we did that in a couple of other videos, but I'll quickly show you how to do that. And to do it, you simply need to come over to our CVE ID dropdown, select conditional formatting, web URL. And then over here, we are going to do under vulnerabilities, profile. There we go. Now all of these have been linked to our to the CVE profile within OTBase. If I click on that and log in, there we go. We have our CVE profile. Okay, so we have our CVE ID description, KEV. Let's add our base score and our priority in there. Easily done. We're just going to reselect that chart again. We're going to do priority. We're going to put it right there after the description. And then we're going to add our base score after the KEV. There we go. That all looks good. Now you notice we're totaling down here. We don't want to do that. So let's turn off totals. I mean, we could leave it, but we've got enough roll up of numbers up here that we don't really need another count down there. Okay, that looks good. We'll go ahead and go and give it the same format as all of our other widgets. Perfect. Now we don't need all of that space. So the next and final piece of this puzzle is we're going to add in our OT ID, device ID, type, actuator, and location. Our OT device type, criticality, and location. And I'll go ahead and just paste that chart over to here, and then we'll work through it really quickly for the sake of brevity. Let's go ahead and it looks like our view is locked here. Oh, it's not locked. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Let's drag this one over, format it a little cleaner. We can bring this one down. There we go. All right. And this looks good. We have everything we need here. We can bring our devices over a little bit. Bring it all over by expanding our description column, which is fine. Avoid 2 lines or 3 lines or 4 lines where possible. So over here on the final chart, we have this set up to look at vulnerabilities device ID. And we're not counting, we're not summarizing that in any way. And then we added the type, and then we added the criticality, and we added the location. So now we can verify that this works and that everything's filtering properly. So if we click USA Charlotte, there we go. Now we're seeing all of our Charlotte stuff. We're seeing all of these update to reflect that. We're seeing all of these update to reflect that. We're seeing, if we go to flat rock here we go, flat rock. So everything is working correctly. And this gives you a number of different ways essentially to visualize, filter, and slice your data. And again, you can filter that data in a number of different ways. You can do that with check boxes, that, those type of filter, by adding this slicer over here if you wanted to. But, my preference is always to get usable visual real estate first and foremost, and then within that real estate you have functionality. So while this isn't a checkbox, it's great because it shows me device count, CVE count by criticality, but then within that I can filter down to a single criticality if I want. Now, a slicer like this does work well if you need to select multiple parameters, which you can see on our devices dashboard. I do have something like that in there where, we have our reference location, Charlotte. Well, let's back out of Charlotte here. And you can see that over here when you have something like your compliance dashboard, you can select multiple policies at the same time. And we cover the compliance dashboard in another video, so be sure to check that one out as well. And you'll see on something like this, you might want to select more than one because you might want to see a couple of different things at a time. There's a setting to allow me to select multiple. It's forcing one right now, but you would be able to check and filter down to a couple of different things here, which is a great reason to have this particular type of slicer. But in general, it works really well to have something like this where it looks good, it gives you usable information, and then within that information you can filter your tables down even more. So that's it. Be sure to check out all of our other videos on the YouTube channel, and let us know if you have any questions or would like any assistance building these dashboards. Thanks.